My granddaughter called me in the middle of the night. "Grandma, I'm at the police station. My stepfather beat me, but now he's telling them I attacked him. They believe him." When I arrived at the station, the officer on duty turned pale and stammering said, "I'm sorry. I didn't know. Where are you watching from today?" Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me take you back to how this nightmare began, because what happened that night was just the tip of an iceberg that had been forming for months. I'm Margaret Thompson, and at 67, I thought I'd seen every kind of scumbag this world had to offer during my 32 years as a district attorney. Turns out, the worst one had been living under my daughter Rebecca's roof, calling himself a stepfather. The phone rang at 2:13 a.m., jarring me from dreams of my late husband's Sunday pancakes. In my experience, calls at that hour meant someone was either dead, arrested, or both. Emma's voice came through shaky and small. Nothing like the confident teenager who'd helped me reorganize my closet just last weekend. "Grandma Maggie, I'm at the police station." Her words tumbled out between sobs. "Derek hit me, but he's telling them I attacked him first. They believe him. They actually believe him." The familiar fire that had fueled my prosecutorial career for 3 decades ignited in my chest. "Which station, sweetheart?" "Downtown precinct. Grandma, they handcuffed me, like I'm some kind of criminal." I was already pulling on clothes, my mind shifting into the sharp focus that had convicted dozens of domestic abusers over the years. "Emma, listen carefully. Don't say another word to anyone until I get there. Not one word. Do you understand? But they keep asking me questions about why I was hitting Derek's car with a baseball bat. Interesting detail. My granddaughter was many things, but violent wasn't one of them. "Emma, what happened to your face?" Silence stretched between us before she whispered. "He said I fell down the stairs." Of course he did, because apparently Derek Collins thought I was born yesterday, instead of being the woman who'd sent his type to prison more times than I could count. I grabbed my keys, noting the irony that I'd spent years putting away men exactly like the one who'd apparently been terrorizing my family right under my nose. The drive downtown took 18 minutes, during which I called my old partner, Marcus Webb, now captain of the downtown precinct. He didn't answer, which was probably for the best. This required a more delicate touch than screaming about police incompetence at 2:30 in the morning. When I pushed through the precinct doors, Officer Bradley was behind the desk, filling out paperwork and looking thoroughly pleased with himself. He was young, maybe 28, with the kind of swagger that comes from believing you've caught a real criminal instead of a terrified teenager. "I'm here for Emma Thompson," I announced, my voice carrying the authority that had once commanded courtrooms. Bradley looked up, and I watched recognition dawn across his face like sunrise over a graveyard. The coffee cup slipped from his suddenly nerveless fingers, crashing to the floor in a spray of ceramic and caffeine. "Ms. Thompson," he stammered, his earlier confidence evaporating. "I mean, Prosecutor Thompson. I didn't know. We didn't realize. Where is my granddaughter?" "Interview room 2, but ma'am, there are procedures." "Officer Bradley." I stepped closer to his desk, letting my voice drop to the tone that had made seasoned defense attorneys break into cold sweats. "In the next 30 seconds, you're going to unlock that interview room, remove those handcuffs from my granddaughter, and then you're going to explain to me exactly how a 16-year-old girl with a black eye became the suspect instead of the victim." Bradley's Adam's apple bobbed like a fishing lure. "The stepfather, Derek Collins. He filed the complaint, said the girl went crazy, started destroying his property with a baseball bat. When he tried to stop her, she attacked him. And her injuries? He said she fell down the stairs trying to run away after the attack." I'd heard more creative fiction from first-year law students. "Where is Mr. Collins now?" "He went home. Didn't want to press charges if we could just get the girl some help. Really seemed concerned about her mental state." Oh, Derek was concerned all right. Concerned that his carefully constructed lie was about to crumble under actual scrutiny. "Show me to my granddaughter. Now." Bradley fumbled for his keys with hands that trembled slightly. As we walked down the narrow hallway lined with interview rooms, I noticed the way other officers averted their eyes. Word had spread quickly through the station that Margaret Thompson was back, and nobody wanted to be the one who'd screwed up her family's case. Emma sat slumped in a metal chair, her wrists still cuffed to the table. When she looked up and saw me, tears started flowing down her bruised cheeks. "Grandma, I didn't attack him. I swear I didn't." I turned to Bradley, who was hovering uncertainly in the doorway. "Keys, now." The handcuffs hit the table with a metallic clank, and Emma immediately threw herself into my arms. She felt so small, this girl who usually seemed to tower over the world with teenage confidence. "Tell me what really happened," I said, guiding her back to her chair, but keeping my hand on her shoulder. "Derek's been—" she started, then stopped, glancing nervously at Officer Bradley. "Officer, I need a moment alone with my granddaughter." "Ma'am, this is an active investigation." The look I gave him could have frozen water in July. Bradley backed out of the room so fast he nearly tripped over his own feet. "Now, Emma, tell me everything." Emma's story came out in fragments, like pieces of broken glass that cut deeper the more you tried to put them together. Derek Collins had been escalating for months, starting with verbal abuse that Rebecca had dismissed as stress from work, then moving to shoving matches that left no visible marks, and finally to tonight's incident. "He's been drinking more lately," Emma said, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "Mom tries to pretend everything's normal, but I can see her flinching when he walks into a room. She's scared of him, Grandma." This was news to me, which meant Rebecca had gotten very good at hiding things. My daughter had always been private, but domestic abuse victims became masters of concealment. What happened tonight specifically? I was in my room doing homework when I heard Mom crying downstairs. Derek was yelling at her about dinner being cold or something stupid like that. Then I heard this loud crack, like he'd hit something. Emma's voice got smaller. "Or someone." The familiar rage built in my chest, the same feeling I'd had every time I'd seen crime scene photos of battered women. But this was my family, which made it infinitely worse. I came downstairs to check on Mom, and Derek grabbed me by the arm. He said if I didn't go back to my room and mind my own business, he'd give me something to really cry about. Emma touched her swollen eye gingerly. "That's when he hit me. And the baseball bat?" For the first time since I'd arrived, Emma almost smiled. Mom's old softball bat was by the back door. After Derek hit me, something just snapped. I grabbed it and went outside to his precious Camaro. I had to admire the girl's spirit, even if her timing could use work. "How much damage did you do?" "Both headlights, the windshield, and I may have dented the hood a few times." Derek Collins was about to learn that terrorizing a Thompson woman came with consequences he hadn't anticipated. "Where was your mother during all this?" Emma's expression darkened. "Locked in the bathroom, probably. That's where she goes when Derek gets violent. She pretends not to see anything." The picture was becoming clearer, and it wasn't pretty. Rebecca was trapped in a classic cycle of abuse, too frightened and probably too ashamed to ask for help. Meanwhile, Emma had been watching it all, building up rage until it exploded into property destruction. "Emma, has Derek ever touched you inappropriately?" "No, nothing like that. But Grandma, I'm scared of what he might do to Mom if I'm not there." Smart girl. She understood the dynamics better than many adults. "You don't need to worry about that anymore." "What do you mean?" I stood up, feeling the familiar satisfaction that came with having a clear plan of action. "I mean, Derek Collins just made the mistake of assaulting a prosecutor's granddaughter. He has no idea what kind of storm he's unleashed." Before Emma could ask what I meant, Officer Bradley knocked on the door. "Ms. Thompson? Captain Webb is here. He'd like to speak with you." Marcus Webb had been my partner when I was still a young prosecutor learning the ropes. He'd worked his way up through the ranks while I'd climbed the ladder in the DA's office. We'd maintained mutual respect over the years, built on successfully putting away some very bad people. "Maggie," he said, stepping into the interview room with the careful expression of a man walking through a minefield. "I understand there's been some confusion about tonight's incident." "No confusion, Marcus. Just a very clear case of domestic violence that your officer somehow managed to flip backwards." Marcus glanced at Emma, taking in her black eye and defensive posture. His jaw tightened. "Bradley, get me the file on this case. All of it." "But sir," Mr. Collins seemed very credible. "Now, Bradley." While we waited for the paperwork, Marcus sat down across from Emma. "Young lady, I owe you an apology. Sometimes good officers make bad judgment calls, especially at 2 a.m. Emma looked to me for guidance. I nodded encouragingly. Tell Captain Webb what you told me, sweetheart. As Emma recounted her story again, I watched Marcus's expression grow darker. By the time she finished, he was rubbing his temples like he felt a massive headache coming on. "Officer Bradley," Marcus called out when the young cop returned with the file. "I want you to explain to me how a 16-year-old girl with a black eye became our suspect in a domestic violence call." "Sir, the stepfather was very convincing. He showed us the damage to his car, explained how the girl had been acting out lately, and the story seemed to fit." "Did you photograph the girl's injuries?" Bradley's silence was answer enough. "Did you ask her any questions about how she got that black eye?" More silence. "Did you consider that maybe, just maybe, a teenage girl doesn't destroy someone's car with a baseball bat for no reason?" "Sir, Mr. Collins said she had been having behavioral problems." "Officer Bradley," I interrupted, standing up slowly. "How long have you been on the force?" 2 years, ma'am." "In those 2 years, how many domestic violence calls have you responded to?" "I'm not sure of the exact number. Approximately. Maybe 30 or 40. And in those 30 or 40 cases, how many times was the victim the one who got arrested?" Bradley was starting to sweat. "This case seemed different." "No, Officer Bradley. This case was exactly the same as every other domestic violence case you've seen, except this time you bought the abuser's story instead of looking at the evidence." That's when Derek Collins made his second mistake of the night. He walked back into the police station. Derek Collins strutted through the precinct doors like a man who owned the place, carrying himself with the kind of confidence that comes from a lifetime of manipulating situations to his advantage. He was average height, but worked out enough to be intimidating, with the kind of square jaw and perfect hair that women probably found attractive until they got close enough to see the coldness in his eyes. "Officer Bradley," he called out in a voice dripping with false concern. "I wanted to check on Emma. How is she? Has she calmed down?" The audacity was breathtaking. Here was a man who'd just beaten up a teenager, convinced the police to arrest her instead of him, and now he was playing the role of worried stepfather. If I hadn't spent 30 years dealing with his type, I might have been impressed by the performance. "Mr. Collins," Captain Webb said, stepping out of the interview room. "I'm Captain Webb. I understand you filed the complaint against your stepdaughter?" "Unfortunately, yes. Emma's been having some serious behavioral issues lately. Tonight, she just completely lost control." Derek's eyes found mine across the room, and I saw the exact moment he realized who I was. His confident expression flickered for just an instant before the mask slipped back into place. "Mr. Collins, this is Margaret Thompson, Emma's grandmother." "Of course." Derek extended his hand with practiced charm. "Mrs. Thompson, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. I'm very concerned about Emma's mental state." I looked at his outstretched hand like it was holding a poisonous snake. "I'm sure you are." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Derek's smile became more forced, but he was committed to his performance. "Emma needs professional help," he continued, addressing Captain Webb while keeping one eye on me. "This violent outburst tonight was just the latest in a series of concerning behaviors. My wife and I have been discussing residential treatment options." Residential treatment. He wanted to get Emma out of the house so he could continue abusing Rebecca without witnesses. The man was more calculating than I'd initially given him credit for. "Mr. Collins," I said in my courtroom voice, "I'd like to ask you a few questions about tonight's incident." "Of course, I want to cooperate fully. How did Emma get that black eye?" Derek didn't miss a beat. "She fell down the stairs when she was running away after attacking my car. I tried to stop her from hurting herself, but she was in such a rage that she wouldn't listen to reason." "Which stairs?" A slight pause. "The front steps." Interesting. Emma had said the confrontation happened inside the house, and she'd gone outside to attack his car. The front steps would have been an odd escape route. And where was my daughter Rebecca during this incident? Rebecca was upstairs. She was too upset to come down and deal with Emma's behavior. Another lie. Emma had said Rebecca was in the bathroom after Derek's initial assault. Derek was improvising now, trying to create a narrative that painted him as the reasonable adult dealing with an unstable teenager. "Mr. Collins, in your complaint, you mentioned that Emma had been having behavioral problems for some time. Can you give us some specific examples?" Derek glanced around the room, probably noticing that he had everyone's complete attention. Officer Bradley was taking notes. Captain Webb was studying him intently, and I was watching him like a hawk studies a field mouse. Well, she's been increasingly defiant toward authority figures. Talking back to teachers, staying out past curfew, that sort of thing. Rebecca and I have been trying to provide structure, but Emma resents having a father figure in her life. Has she ever been violent before tonight? Not physically, but she's been verbally aggressive. Lots of shouting, slamming doors, threatening to run away. Standard teenage behavior, in other words. Derek was building his case on normal adolescent rebellion, which suggested he didn't have much actual ammunition. Mr. Collins, I notice you have some scratches on your hands. Derek looked down at his knuckles, where several deep scratches were clearly visible. Emma scratched me when I tried to restrain her from destroying my car. Those look like defensive wounds to me. I'm sorry? I stepped closer, letting him see the prosecutor who'd sent hundreds of men like him to prison. Defensive wounds, the kind someone gets when they're trying to grab at someone who's fighting back. Very common in domestic assault cases. Derek's practiced smile was starting to crack around the edges. Mrs. Thompson, I understand you're protective of your granddaughter, but Emma attacked me and my property. I'm the victim here. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, you look like a 42-year-old man who beat up a 16-year-old girl and then convinced the police to arrest her for defending herself. That's not what happened. Then perhaps you'd be willing to take a polygraph test? The silence that followed was deafening. Derek Collins opened and closed his mouth several times, looking like a fish who'd suddenly found itself on dry land. I don't think that's necessary, he finally said. No? You seemed so eager to cooperate fully just a moment ago. Captain Webb cleared his throat. Mr. Collins, I think we need to re-examine tonight's events. Would you be willing to come in tomorrow for a more detailed interview? Actually, Derek said, checking his watch with exaggerated casualness, I should get home to Rebecca. She's probably worried sick. He was backing toward the door now, his confident demeanor completely abandoned. Perhaps we could table the polygraph discussion until everyone's had a chance to calm down. Of course, I said pleasantly. There's no rush. After all, domestic violence charges can be filed within the statute of limitations. Derek froze halfway to the door. Domestic violence charges? Did I not mention that? I'm sorry. Sometimes I forget that not everyone is familiar with Texas Penal Code 22.01. Assault family violence. Family. It's a fascinating statute, really. For the first time since he'd walked into the station, Derek Collins looked genuinely scared. He mumbled something about calling his lawyer and practically ran for the exit. Captain Webb watched him go, then turned to me with something that might have been admiration. You always did know how to clear a room, Maggie. Marcus, I need you to photograph Emma's injuries properly, take a detailed statement about the assault, and then I want Derek Collins picked up for questioning tomorrow. Consider it done. But Maggie, you know he's going to lawyer up after tonight. I smiled, feeling the familiar thrill that came with a case I was going to win. Let him. I've been prosecuting domestic abusers longer than he's been perfecting his act. That's when Emma tugged on my sleeve. Grandma, what about Mom? If Derek figures out we're building a case against him. The girl was right. If Derek felt cornered, he might escalate the violence at home. Rebecca was in danger, and she didn't even know it yet. At 4:17 a.m., I sat in my car outside Rebecca's house, watching Derek's damaged Camaro in the driveway and trying to decide the best way to extract my daughter from what was essentially a hostage situation. Emma was asleep in the passenger seat, exhausted from the night's events, and I'd made the decision not to send her back into that house until Derek was behind bars. The house looked peaceful from the outside. Two-story colonial with a well-maintained lawn and Rebecca's flower garden visible in the early morning light. It was the kind of home that screamed suburban stability, which made it the perfect cover for domestic abuse. The neighbors would never suspect that behind those cheerful yellow shutters, a predator was systematically destroying my daughter's life. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Collins just called a lawyer. Expensive one. Might want to move fast. Of course he had. Derek probably had some kind of contingency plan for this exact scenario. Men like him always did. They were control freaks who planned for every possible threat to their carefully constructed kingdoms. I called Rebecca's cell phone, knowing Derek was probably asleep and she might be able to answer without waking him. Mom, Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. Is Emma okay? The police called and said there was an incident, but they wouldn't tell me much. Emma's fine. She's with me. But we need to talk and not over the phone. I can't leave right now. He's not in a good mood. Translation. Derek was a ticking time bomb, and Rebecca was afraid to do anything that might set him off. Rebecca, I'm parked outside your house. I need you to come out here. Mom, I can't. If Derek wakes up and I'm gone, what will he do, Rebecca? Silence stretched between us, filled with all the things my daughter couldn't bring herself to say out loud. Sweetheart, I know you're scared, but Emma told me what's been happening, and we need to get you out of there. Emma doesn't understand. Derek's under a lot of pressure at work, and sometimes he what? Hits you? Threatens you? Makes you lock yourself in the bathroom while he terrorizes your daughter? I heard Rebecca's sharp intake of breath. She told you about that? She told me everything. Now I need you to very quietly get dressed. Come outside and let me help you. Mom, you don't understand. If I leave, Derek will what? Come after you? Rebecca, the man just spent the evening trying to convince the police that Emma attacked him. He's not exactly operating from a position of strength right now. Another long pause. Then, give me 5 minutes. While I waited, I studied the house more carefully, noting the security system sticker on the front window and the way Derek had positioned his car to block the driveway. Even his parking was about control. Rebecca would have to ask permission to go anywhere because she couldn't get her car out without moving his first. Emma stirred in the passenger seat. Is Mom coming out? She's going to try. Grandma, what if Derek wakes up and finds her gone? It was a valid concern. Men like Derek often became most dangerous when they felt their control slipping. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. The front door opened slowly, and Rebecca slipped out wearing jeans and a hoodie, moving like someone who'd had a lot of practice being invisible. Even in the dim morning light, I could see she'd lost weight, and her normally confident posture had been replaced by the hunched shoulders of someone who'd learned to make herself smaller. She climbed into the back seat without a word, then immediately threw her arms around Emma. Honey, I'm so sorry. I should have protected you. Mom, you're bleeding, Emma said, touching a cut on Rebecca's lip that was mostly hidden by her hood. It's nothing. Rebecca's voice trailed off as she caught my eyes in the rearview mirror. Mom, please don't look at me like that. Like what? Like I was seeing my intelligent, successful daughter reduced to a shadow of herself by a manipulative abuser? Like I was calculating how many ways I could legally destroy the man who'd done this to my family? Rebecca, how long has this been going on? It's not what you think. Derek isn't a monster. He just has anger management issues. And with the stress from his job... Stop! I turned around to face her directly. I've heard this speech from 1,000 victims over the years. He's not stressed, he's not overwhelmed, and he doesn't have anger management issues. He has a control problem. And you and Emma are his victims. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. You don't understand. If I leave him, he'll make sure I lose everything. He handles all our finances. He knows people who could hurt my career, and he's threatened to... To what? To tell everyone I'm an unfit mother. He says he has evidence that I've been neglecting Emma, drinking too much, having affairs. None of it's true, but Derek's very convincing when he wants to be. The classic abuser's playbook. Isolate the victim, control the resources, and create a web of threats that made escape seem impossible. Derek Collins was more sophisticated than your average domestic terrorist, but the patterns were exactly the same. Rebecca, listen to me very carefully. Derek Collins just made the mistake of assaulting a prosecutor's granddaughter in front of witnesses. Whatever leverage he thinks he has over you just became irrelevant. What do you mean? Emma leaned forward. Grandma made the police realize Derek was lying. They want to question him tomorrow. They do? I nodded. And that's just the beginning. By the time I'm finished with Derek Collins, he's going to wish he'd never heard the Thompson name. For the first time since she'd gotten in the car, Rebecca almost smiled. What are you planning, Mom? Justice? Sweetheart. Plain and simple justice. That's when Derek's Camaro roared to life in the driveway behind us, and I realized he'd been awake the entire time. Derek's headlights flooded my car as he backed out of the driveway with the kind of aggressive speed that suggested he was either very angry or very panicked. Probably both. Through my rearview mirror, I watched him pull up behind us, effectively trapping my car against the curb. "Mom, what do we do?" Rebecca's voice had gone small and frightened. "We stay calm," I said, reaching for my phone, "and we let Derek make his next mistake." Derek sat in his damaged car for nearly a full minute, engine running, clearly trying to decide on his best move. I could see him through his cracked windshield, talking on his phone, probably calling that expensive lawyer Marcus had mentioned. "Should I call the police?" Emma asked. "Not yet. Let's see what Derek's going to do." Finally, Derek got out of his car and approached mine with the kind of deliberate swagger that was meant to intimidate. He knocked on my driver's side window with more force than necessary. I rolled the window down exactly 2 inches. "Good morning, Derek. Rebecca needs to come home. Now." "I'm afraid that's not going to happen." Derek's jaw tightened. "She's my wife, and this is family business." "Family business?" I let a little acid creep into my voice. "Is that what you call beating up teenagers now?" I never laid a hand on Emma. She attacked me, and if you weren't so blinded by family loyalty, you'd see that. The man was committed to his lie. I had to give him that. "Derek, I've seen the scratches on your knuckles. I've seen Emma's black eye. And I've spent 30 years in courtrooms listening to men exactly like you explain how their victims were really the aggressors. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Let me guess your entire defense strategy. Emma's a troubled teenager with behavioral problems. She's been acting out since you married her mother, probably because she resents your authority. Last night she finally snapped and became violent, and you were just trying to protect yourself and your property." Derek's confident expression faltered slightly. I just recited his exact story back to him, which meant either I was psychic or I'd heard it all before. "The problem with that defense," I continued, "is that it only works if the jury believes you're a credible witness. And after I get finished presenting evidence about your history of domestic violence, your credibility is going to be approximately 0. I don't have a history of domestic violence." "Are you sure about that?" "Because domestic abusers tend to leave patterns, Derek. Previous relationships that ended badly, complaints that were never filed, employers who might remember anger management issues." For the first time, Derek looked genuinely worried. "You can't just dig through my private life." "Actually, I can. See, once you're charged with domestic assault, your entire past becomes relevant to establishing a pattern of behavior. It's fascinating what investigators can uncover when they start looking." Derek glanced back at Rebecca, who was shrinking deeper into her hoodie. "Rebecca, this is ridiculous. Come home, and we'll work this out." "She's not going anywhere with you," I said. "You can't keep my wife from me. Watch me." Derek's mask of civility was starting to slip. "Old woman, you have no idea who you're messing with." "Old woman?" I almost laughed. "Derek, I've sent better men than you to prison before breakfast. Would you like to add threatening a prosecutor to your list of charges?" "You're not a prosecutor anymore." "No, but I still have friends who are, and police captains who remember when I used to put abusers like you away for fun." Derek leaned closer to my window, and I could smell alcohol on his breath. He'd been drinking, which explained his poor decision-making tonight. "This isn't over." "You're absolutely right. It's just getting started." Derek stood there for another moment, clearly trying to think of something threatening enough to regain control of the situation. When nothing came to him, he turned and stalked back to his car. "Is he leaving?" Rebecca asked. Derek sat in his car for another minute, then slowly drove away, but something about his body language suggested this was a strategic retreat, not a surrender. "What now?" Emma asked. I started my car and pulled away from the curb. "Now we go somewhere safe while I make some phone calls." "Where?" "My house. And then I'm going to introduce Derek Collins to some people who specialize in making domestic abusers' lives very uncomfortable." 20 minutes later, we were sitting in my kitchen while I brewed coffee and made a list of everyone I was going to call. Rebecca and Emma huddled together on my couch, both looking shell-shocked by the night's events. "Mom," Rebecca said quietly, "what if Derek's lawyer is really good? What if he finds a way to make this all go away?" I looked up from my legal pad, where I'd been writing names and phone numbers. "Sweetheart, Derek Collins thinks he's playing chess, but he doesn't realize he just challenged a grandmaster." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Derek made 3 crucial mistakes tonight. First, he put his hands on my granddaughter. Second, he underestimated how thoroughly I document everything when I'm building a case. And third, he assumed that being out of the prosecutor's office meant I was out of the game. I picked up my phone and dialed the first number on my list. Sarah Martinez? It's Maggie Thompson. I know it's early, but I need a favor. Sarah Martinez was a private investigator who'd worked with my office for years, specializing in domestic abuse cases. She was also the kind of woman who considered destroying abusive men a personal hobby. Maggie, I heard you retired. How's civilian life treating you? Not as quiet as I'd hoped. Sarah, I need a complete background check on someone. Derek Collins, married to my daughter. And I need it fast. This is personal? Very. Give me his full name, date of birth if you have it, and current address. I'll have something for you by tomorrow afternoon. After I hung up, Rebecca stared at me with something that might have been awe. You're really going after him, aren't you? Honey, Derek Collins has no idea what he's unleashed, but he's about to learn. That's when my doorbell rang, and I realized Derek had followed us. Through my front window, I could see Derek standing on my porch, holding what looked like a bouquet of flowers and wearing his most charming smile. The transformation was remarkable. Gone was the angry, threatening man from an hour ago, replaced by someone who looked like he should be selling insurance or running for mayor. He brought flowers, Emma said incredulously. Manipulators often escalate to grand gestures when intimidation fails, I explained, not moving toward the door. He's trying to rewrite the narrative. Derek knocked politely, then called out in a voice loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Mrs. Thompson, I brought these for Rebecca. I just want to apologize for the misunderstanding tonight. Misunderstanding. As if terrorizing his family was just a simple communication error. Mom, what if the neighbors are watching? Rebecca asked. Derek's very good at making people believe he's the reasonable one. She was right. Derek was putting on a performance for anyone who might be observing, establishing himself as the concerned husband, trying to make amends while I was the unreasonable mother-in-law, keeping him from his family. I opened the door but left the chain lock engaged. Derek, it's 5:30 in the morning. I know, and I'm sorry for disturbing you so early, but I couldn't sleep knowing that Rebecca and Emma were upset. He held up the flowers. I just want to talk to my wife for a few minutes. That's not going to happen. Derek's smile never wavered, but I caught the flash of irritation in his eyes. Mrs. Thompson, I understand you're protective of your family, but Rebecca and I are married adults. We can work through our problems without outside interference. Outside interference. He was already positioning me as the meddling in-law who was making things worse. Derek, the only problem here is that you assaulted a 16-year-old girl and then tried to have her arrested for defending herself. That's not what happened, and you know it. Derek's voice remained perfectly calm and reasonable. Emma has been struggling with some behavioral issues, and last night she had what I can only describe as a complete breakdown. I'm hoping we can get her the professional help she needs. Professional help? He was still trying to paint Emma as mentally unstable. The only person who needs professional help is you, Derek. Specifically, anger management counseling in a state correctional facility. Derek's laugh sounded genuinely amused. Mrs. Thompson, I understand you used to be a prosecutor, but you're retired now. You can't just throw around accusations and expect people to take them seriously. Watch me. Rebecca, Derek called out, raising his voice slightly. Honey, please come talk to me. Let's go home and work this out like the adults we are. She's not going anywhere with you, I repeated. Actually, Derek said, his smile becoming more forced, unless Rebecca is under arrest or you have some kind of legal guardianship, you can't prevent her from leaving with her husband. He was technically correct, which was the most dangerous kind of correct when dealing with manipulative abusers. Rebecca was an adult, and if she chose to go with Derek, I couldn't legally stop her. Rebecca, Derek continued, I love you, and I love Emma. What happened tonight was just a family disagreement that got out of hand. We can fix this. I heard movement behind me and turned to see Rebecca standing in the hallway, looking torn between fear and guilt. Derek had found her weakness, her desire to believe that this could all be resolved peacefully. Mom, Rebecca said quietly, maybe I should talk to him. Absolutely not. Derek heard her voice, and his smile became genuine for the first time. Becca, sweetheart. Please, just 5 minutes. Rebecca took a step toward the door, and I realized I was about to lose her to Derek's manipulation. Rebecca, before you make that decision, let me ask you something. What happens when you go home with Derek and the police show up tomorrow to arrest him? What do you mean? I mean Derek's about to be charged with domestic assault. When that happens, there will be a mandatory protective order keeping him away from you and Emma. If you go home with him now, you'll be trapped in the house when the walls start closing in. Derek's composure cracked slightly. There aren't going to be any charges. Emma attacked me, remember? Derek, I've already spoken to Captain Webb. Emma's injuries have been photographed and documented. Her statement has been taken. And thanks to your performance at the police station tonight, you're now the prime suspect in a domestic violence case. You're bluffing. Am I? Sarah Martinez is already running a background check on you. By tomorrow afternoon, I'll know everything about your previous relationships, your employment history, and any other complaints that might have been filed against you. For the first time, Derek looked genuinely shaken. You can't do that. I already am. And Derek, here's something you should know about private investigators who specialize in domestic abuse cases. They're very good at finding patterns, even when those patterns have been carefully hidden. Derek stared at me for a long moment, his charming mask completely abandoned. Then he turned his attention back to Rebecca. Becca, if you don't come home with me right now, I'm going to assume you're choosing your mother over your marriage. There it was. The ultimatum that abusers always eventually delivered. Choose me, or choose everyone else in your life. That's not a choice, Derek, I said. That's a threat. It's reality. Rebecca can either come home and work on our marriage, or she can stay here and destroy it. Rebecca looked between Derek and me, tears streaming down her face. I need time to think. No, Derek said flatly. You need to decide. Right now. And that's when Rebecca finally saw him clearly. Not the charming man she'd married, not the stressed husband who just needed understanding, but the controlling abuser who'd been hiding behind those facades. I'm staying here, she said quietly. Derek's flower bouquet hit my porch with a wet thud. Fine. But Rebecca, when you're ready to stop playing games and come home, remember that I won't wait forever. He walked back to his car without another word, leaving the crushed flowers scattered across my doorstep like a promise of things to come. By noon the next day, my kitchen table looked like a war room. I had legal pads filled with notes, my laptop open to various databases, and my phone constantly buzzing with callbacks from old colleagues who were eager to help take down a domestic abuser. Sarah Martinez had delivered her preliminary report on Derek Collins, and it was even more damning than I'd hoped. 3 previous relationships, I told Rebecca and Emma as I reviewed the file, all ended with restraining orders or police complaints that were mysteriously dropped. So he's done this before, Emma said. Multiple times, and he's gotten progressively more sophisticated about it. I flipped to the next page. His first wife, Jennifer Walsh, filed domestic violence charges in 2018, but dropped them after Derek hired an expensive lawyer who painted her as vindictive and mentally unstable. Rebecca winced. That's what he threatened to do to me. His second wife, Amanda Collins, yes, she kept his name, had a similar experience. Filed charges, got scared off by legal intimidation, and eventually just moved to another state to get away from him. What about the third one? Lisa Chen. She was smart enough to document everything, but Derek's lawyer got the case dismissed on a technicality. I looked up at Rebecca. Derek has a system, sweetheart. He finds intelligent, successful women, isolates them from their support systems, and then systematically destroys their confidence until they believe they deserve the abuse. But I didn't deserve it, Rebecca said, as if she was just realizing this. Of course you didn't. None of his victims did. Emma leaned forward. Grandma, what happened to those other women? Are they okay? That's the interesting part. Sarah managed to track down Jennifer Walsh. She's willing to testify about her experiences with Derek if we can guarantee her protection. Protection from what? Rebecca asked. Derek has a history of retaliating against women who speak out against him. Nothing violent enough to get him arrested, but a pattern of harassment, property damage, and intimidation. My phone rang, interrupting our strategy session. It was Marcus Webb. Maggie, we tried to bring Derek Collins in for questioning this morning. Tried? He's gone. Neighbors saw him loading suitcases into his car around 7 a.m. We've got an APB out, but his lawyer says Derek is visiting family out of state and will cooperate fully when he returns. I wasn't surprised. Men like Derek often ran when they realized the walls were closing in. Marcus, what about the warrant? Judge signed it an hour ago. Domestic assault, interfering with a police investigation, and intimidating a witness. Intimidating a witness? Emma, Derek's little visit to your house this morning constituted witness intimidation under Texas law. Things were progressing faster than I'd anticipated, which was both good and bad. Good because Derek would soon be facing serious charges. Bad because cornered animals were the most dangerous. Marcus, I need you to put a patrol car outside my house. Derek's escalating, and I don't want him making another run at Rebecca or Emma. Already done. Officer Martinez will be parked across the street starting this afternoon. After I hung up, Rebecca stared at me with a mixture of admiration and fear. Mom, what if Derek decides to do something really crazy? What if he comes back with a gun or something? It was a valid concern. Domestic violence situations became exponentially more dangerous when the abuser felt trapped. Sweetheart, that's why we're being careful. That's why we have police protection. And that's why Derek is going to discover that attacking a prosecutor's family comes with consequences he never imagined. What do you mean? I pulled up another file on my laptop. Remember how Derek threatened to destroy your reputation and career? Two can play that game. Mom, what did you do? I called Judge Harrison. You remember her. She used to work with me in the DA's office. She's now on the family court bench, and she's very interested in Derek's pattern of domestic abuse. Why would she care? Because Derek's been married 3 times. Rebecca, which means there are probably custody issues with children from previous relationships. Judge Harrison is going to review all of Derek's family court cases to see if there are patterns of abuse that previous judges missed. Emma looked up from her phone. Grandma, I just Googled Derek's name. There are already news articles about him being wanted for domestic assault. Local news? No, it's on some kind of legal blog. Listen to this. Local businessman Derek Collins, wanted on domestic violence charges, has a history of abusing women and escaping prosecution through legal intimidation. I almost smiled. That would be Janet Morrison's blog. She's a legal journalist who specializes in exposing domestic abusers who use the system to continue their abuse. You called her too? I called everyone, sweetheart. Derek Collins is about to discover that his carefully constructed life is built on quicksand. Rebecca looked overwhelmed. Mom, what if this makes him more dangerous? What if he decides he has nothing left to lose? Before I could answer, Officer Martinez knocked on my front door. But when I looked through the window, I saw her talking urgently into her radio. Mrs. Thompson, she called out, I need you and your family to stay inside. We just got a report that Derek Collins' car was spotted 2 blocks from here. That's when I heard the sound of breaking glass from my backyard. The sound came from my kitchen window, followed immediately by the thud of something heavy hitting my kitchen floor. Officer Martinez was already calling for backup as I herded Rebecca and Emma into my front hallway, away from any windows. Stay down and stay together, I told them, feeling the familiar adrenaline surge that came with genuine danger. Through my kitchen doorway, I could see a brick lying among shattered glass on my floor, with what looked like a note wrapped around it. Derek's signature move, apparently. Dramatic gestures designed to terrorize his victims. Mrs. Thompson, Officer Martinez called from outside. I'm coming in through your front door. Derek Collins is not in the immediate area, but we're treating this as an active threat. I unlocked the door for her, and Martinez entered with her weapon drawn, moving through my house with practiced efficiency. She was young but clearly experienced, checking sight lines and potential hiding spots before declaring the house secure. He's gone for now, she said, holstering her weapon. But he left you a message. Using a pair of tongs from my kitchen drawer, Martinez carefully unwrapped the note from around the brick. Even from across the room, I could see Derek's distinctive handwriting. This doesn't end until you stop interfering. Classic intimidation tactic, I told Rebecca and Emma, who were both pale and shaking. Derek's trying to scare us into backing down. It's working, Emma said quietly. No, sweetheart. It's just proving that we're on the right track. Men like Derek only resort to property damage when their other methods of control stop working. Martinez was photographing the brick and note, treating it like the evidence it would become. Mrs. Thompson, I strongly recommend that you and your family consider staying somewhere else tonight. Derek Collins is clearly unstable, and throwing bricks through windows suggests he's escalating toward more serious violence. Where would we go? Rebecca asked. I have a colleague who runs a safe house for domestic violence victims, Martinez said. It's specifically designed for situations like this. The idea of hiding in a safe house rankled me. I'd spent 30 years putting criminals behind bars, not running from them. But I also had Rebecca and Emma to consider, and their safety was more important than my pride. Let me make some calls first, I said. But before I could reach for my phone, it rang. The caller ID showed Derek's number. Don't answer it, Martinez said immediately. Actually, I think I should. Put it on speaker. Martinez nodded reluctantly as I accepted the call. Hello, Derek. Mrs. Thompson. Derek's voice sounded different, calmer, but with an undertone of barely controlled rage. I hope you got my message. I did. Destruction of property, criminal mischief, and continued intimidation of witnesses. You're really racking up the charges. Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you can destroy my life and I'll just sit back and take it? Derek, you destroyed your own life the moment you decided to beat up my granddaughter. Emma's not your granddaughter anymore. Neither Rebecca nor Emma are your family. They're mine, and I decide what happens to them. The possessive language was chilling. Derek genuinely believed he owned Rebecca and Emma, which made him infinitely more dangerous. Derek, where are you? Somewhere you'll never find me. But don't worry. Mrs. Thompson, I'll be in touch. The line went dead, and Martinez immediately got on her radio to report the call. This just became a federal case, she told me, threatening witnesses across state lines, fleeing to avoid prosecution. The FBI will want to talk to all of you. Good, I said. The more agencies looking for Derek, the faster we'll catch him. But even as I said it, I knew Derek Collins wasn't finished with us. Men like him didn't give up easily, especially when they felt their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. Grandma, Emma said, I'm scared. What if Derek decides he can't have Mom, so nobody can? It was the question I'd been dreading, because it was the most logical escalation for someone like Derek. When domestic abusers lost control completely, they often turned to murder-suicide as their final act of possession. That's not going to happen, I said firmly. How can you be sure? Because Derek Collins is about to learn that threatening a Thompson woman was the biggest mistake of his criminal career. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check your email. Derek's not as smart as he thinks he is. A friend. I opened my laptop and found an email with a video attachment. The sender was listed as Justice for Women, which wasn't a name I recognized. What is it? Rebecca asked. I clicked play on the video and Derek's face filled my screen. He was sitting in what looked like a motel room, talking to someone off camera. The old lady thinks she can intimidate me, Derek was saying, but I've got plenty of experience dealing with women who don't know their place. The person behind the camera asked, What are you going to do? Derek's smile was cold and calculating. Whatever it takes to get my family back, and if I can't have them, I'll make sure Margaret Thompson regrets the day she decided to interfere in my marriage. The video ended, and we all sat in stunned silence. Who sent this? Officer Martinez asked. I don't know, but I think Derek Collins just confessed to planning further violence against my family. That's when I realized Derek had made his fourth and final mistake. He'd underestimated not just me, but everyone else who was willing to help bring down a domestic abuser. The hunter was about to become the hunted. The FBI task force that assembled in my living room the next morning looked like something from a crime drama. Special Agent Sarah Chen, a specialist in domestic terrorism and stalking cases, sat across from me with the kind of focused intensity that comes from hunting dangerous predators for a living. Mrs. Thompson, Agent Chen said, the video you received yesterday is incredibly valuable evidence, but we need to discuss the source. Justice for Women isn't just a random email address. It's connected to a network of domestic violence survivors who conduct their own investigations. Vigilantes? I asked. More like a support network with excellent technical skills. One of Derek Collins' previous victims, Jennifer Walsh, has been tracking his activities for years. She's the one who recorded that video. Rebecca looked up from her coffee. You mean she's been following Derek? In a manner of speaking. After Derek's harassment following their divorce, Jennifer developed some impressive surveillance skills. She's been documenting his pattern of abuse across multiple relationships. Agent Chen opened her laptop and showed us a file that was remarkably comprehensive. Photos of Derek with various women, copies of police reports that had been filed and dropped, medical records showing injuries consistent with domestic abuse, and financial records showing Derek's pattern of isolating his victims economically. Jennifer Walsh has been building a federal case against Derek for 3 years, Agent Chen continued. Your granddaughter's assault was just the final piece of evidence we needed. Emma looked amazed. So there are other people trying to stop Derek? A whole network of them. Derek Collins made the mistake of abusing women who were intelligent, resourceful, and unwilling to let him continue victimizing others. I felt a surge of admiration for these women. They'd turned their trauma into a weapon against their abuser, creating exactly the kind of systematic response that men like Derek never anticipated. Agent Chen, what's Derek's current status? We tracked him to a motel outside Austin. He's been using burner phones and paying cash, but Jennifer Walsh has been monitoring his credit cards and known associates. We should have him in custody within the next 24 hours. And then what happens? Federal charges for interstate flight to avoid prosecution, witness intimidation, and interstate stalking. Combined with the local domestic assault charges, Derek Collins is looking at significant prison time. Rebecca had been quiet throughout the briefing, but now she spoke up. Agent Chen, what happens to women like me, the ones who stayed too long, who didn't fight back soon enough? Agent Chen's expression softened. Ms. Collins, domestic abuse is a crime, not a character flaw. The only person responsible for Derek's actions is Derek himself. But I should have protected Emma better. You survived. And when you had the opportunity to escape, you took it. That's what matters. My phone rang, interrupting the conversation. The caller ID showed an unknown number, but Agent Chen nodded for me to answer it. Mrs. Thompson, Derek's voice was tight with controlled fury. I hope you're enjoying your little FBI meeting. Agent Chen immediately started tracing the call while I kept Derek talking. Derek, where are you? Close enough to watch. You know what I've realized, Mrs. Thompson? You're not nearly as smart as you think you are. Really? Because from where I'm sitting, you're the one hiding in motels and making desperate phone calls. Derek's laugh was harsh. You think this is over? You think arresting me will solve anything? There are plenty of other women out there, Mrs. Thompson. Younger women. More vulnerable women. And when I get out of prison, I'll find them. The threat was chilling, but also revealing. Derek was already planning his next cycle of abuse, which meant he had no intention of changing his behavior. Derek, you're not getting out of prison. Not for a very long time. We'll see. I have excellent lawyers, and I'm very good at convincing people that I'm the victim in this situation. Agent Chen held up a tablet showing Derek's location. He was calling from a cell tower less than 2 miles away. Derek, I said, there's something you should know. You're not the only one who's good at investigations. What's that supposed to mean? It means Jennifer Walsh has been documenting your crimes for 3 years. Amanda Collins kept detailed records of your abuse. Lisa Chen has medical records proving what you did to her. You're not facing one victim, Derek. You're facing all of them. For the first time, Derek's voice lost its confident edge. That's impossible. Is it? You thought you could terrorize women into silence, but what you actually did was create a network of survivors who were determined to stop you. Agent Chen was already mobilizing her team, but she held up a finger indicating I should keep Derek on the line. Derek, it's over. Turn yourself in, and maybe you can avoid some of the more serious federal charges. No, Derek said, his voice becoming increasingly agitated. This isn't over. If I can't have my family back, then nobody wins. The line went dead, and Agent Chen immediately got on her radio. All units, Derek Collins is mobile and making threats. Consider him armed and extremely dangerous. Emma grabbed my hand. Grandma, what did he mean when he said nobody wins? Before I could answer, Officer Martinez burst through my front door. Mrs. Thompson, Derek Collins just drove past your house. He's circling the block. Agent Chen drew her weapon. Everyone away from the windows. Now. That's when we heard Derek's car pull into my driveway, and I realized he'd decided to make his final stand. Derek Collins sat in his damaged Camaro in my driveway for exactly 4 minutes, engine running while FBI agents and local police surrounded my house. Through my front window, I could see him gripping his steering wheel and staring at my front door with the kind of intensity that comes from a man who's lost everything and decided to take everyone else down with him. "Mrs. Thompson," Agent Chen said quietly, "I need you and your family in the back bedroom, now." But I'd spent 30 years facing down criminals in courtrooms, and I wasn't about to hide from Derek Collins in my own home. "Agent Chen, let me talk to him." "Absolutely not. I know men like Derek. Right now he's deciding between surrender and suicide, probably taking us with him. If he's going to listen to anyone, it'll be me." Emma grabbed my arm. "Grandma, don't go out there." "Sweetheart, I'm not going outside. But Derek called me for a reason. He wants to talk." Agent Chen considered this for a moment, then nodded reluctantly. "Keep him talking, but stay away from windows and doors." I picked up my phone and called Derek's number. He answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Thompson." "Derek, you're surrounded. There's no way out of this except through surrender." "I know." His voice was eerily calm. "I've been thinking about what you said, about Jennifer and Amanda and Lisa. About all of them working together against me. They're not working against you, Derek. They're working for justice." "Justice?" Derek repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "You know what's funny? I actually loved Rebecca. I loved Emma too, in my own way." "No, Derek, you don't love people by terrorizing them. I was trying to protect them, to make them strong, to teach them how the world really works. It was the classic abuser's rationalization, turning violence into education and control into love. Derek, hitting a 16-year-old girl isn't protection, it's assault." Emma needed discipline. She was disrespectful, rebellious. If Rebecca had supported me instead of undermining my authority, Rebecca was protecting her daughter from an abuser. Derek was quiet for a moment, and I could hear sirens approaching from multiple directions. More backup was arriving, which meant the situation was escalating toward its conclusion. "Mrs. Thompson, do you want to know what I realized sitting out here?" "What's that, Derek?" "I realized that you're right. I am exactly what you said I am. A predator. A man who hurts women because it makes me feel powerful." The admission was startling. Most abusers went to their graves denying what they were. "Derek, if you understand that, then you can change." "No, I can't. I've tried, Mrs. Thompson. After Jennifer, after Amanda, after Lisa, I swore I'd be different with Rebecca. I lasted maybe 6 months before I started finding reasons to get angry." Agent Chen was watching me intently, probably trying to determine whether Derek was having a breakdown or planning something violent. "Derek, you can get help. There are programs for men like me." "Mrs. Thompson, I've been to therapy. I've taken anger management classes. I've read every book on healthy relationships ever written. And you know what I learned?" "What?" "I learned that I'm very good at convincing therapists that I'm making progress while I continue abusing women. I'm a predator, Mrs. Thompson, and predators don't change. We just get better at hiding what we are." The honesty was chilling, but it also confirmed what I'd always believed about men like Derek. They didn't abuse women because they couldn't control their anger. They abused women because they enjoyed the control. "Derek, what are you planning to do?" "I'm planning to make sure I never hurt another woman again." Before I could ask what that meant, Derek's car door opened. Agent Chen immediately got on her radio, coordinating with the tactical team that had taken positions around my house. Derek walked slowly toward my front door, his hands visible and empty. He looked smaller somehow, as if finally acknowledging what he was had deflated his entire presence. "Derek," I called out through the door, "what do you want?" "I want to apologize to Emma and Rebecca. I want to tell them that none of this was their fault. You can do that in court." "No, Mrs. Thompson, I can't." That's when I saw the small device in Derek's hand. At first I thought it was a phone, but then I realized it was a detonator. "Agent Chen," I said quietly, "Derek's got a bomb." The next 30 seconds moved like a slow-motion nightmare. Agent Chen was shouting into her radio. Tactical officers were repositioning, and Derek was walking calmly toward my front porch. "Derek," I called out, "think about what you're doing." "I am thinking. For the first time in years, I'm thinking clearly. This won't solve anything. It'll solve everything, Mrs. Thompson. Rebecca and Emma will be safe. Jennifer and Amanda and Lisa will be safe. Every woman I might have met in the future will be safe. Derek stopped at my front door and pressed his face against the glass. Tell Emma and Rebecca that I'm sorry. Tell them they deserved better than me. Derek, don't. The explosion wasn't as large as I'd expected. Derek had positioned himself away from the house, sacrificing any chance of taking us with him. The tactical team later determined that he'd rigged a small device designed to kill only him, probably stolen from his construction company. When the smoke cleared, Derek Collins was gone, and the nightmare that had terrorized my family was finally over. 3 months later, I sat in my kitchen reading Jennifer Walsh's email about the foundation she was starting for domestic abuse survivors. Rebecca had gone back to school to get her counseling degree, saying she wanted to help other women recognize the warning signs she'd missed. Emma was seeing a therapist and doing remarkably well, showing the kind of resilience that made me proud to be her grandmother. Derek Collins had been right about one thing. Predators don't change. But what he'd underestimated was the strength of the women he'd tried to destroy. We didn't just survive him. We turned our survival into a weapon against every man like him. And that, I thought as I poured my morning coffee, was the best kind of justice. The coffee was still hot when my phone rang. Another grandmother, another frightened voice, another story that started with, "I got a call in the middle of the night." I reached for my legal pad and started taking notes. After all, Margaret Thompson wasn't finished with men like Derek Collins, not by a long shot. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.